conclusion.
Did it again. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
Those who died at Gettysburg may still haunt that battleground.
That's too wild. Oh, it got again.
Cross this threshold to places of mystery. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Realistic Civil War reenactments have made this national park a popular tourist destination. But in the first week of July 1863, it was the site of genuine carnage.
Gettysburg, if they drilled here, they wouldn't find oil. They'd find blood. I don't know how many thousands of gallons that have drained into the soil. It's just everywhere.
Dave Oster, director of the International Ghost Hunters Society, holds an annual conference in Gettysburg.
We originally came to Gettysburg because we knew that whenever a large number of people died in a relatively short period of time, that there's a lot of unresolved issues, unfinished business among those that died, and they would remain behind till they were finished. And whenever you have a war, you really notice it.
Ghost hunters aren't the only ones interested in the spiritual world of this battlefield. Author and historian Mark Nesbitt has spent the last 25 years living and working here. He is now one of the leading authors on Gettysburg, with over 11 published books.
Gettysburg, to me, is a growing thing. It's becoming more and more of kind of a mystical place. Sure, there was a terrible battle that was fought here, the worst on the North American continent. But it's part of our myth, our American myth, in that it virtually destroyed on this continent the biblical scourge of slavery.
Victory came at a terrible price. The Battle of Gettysburg took just 3 days to fight, but in those 3 days, nearly 51,000 men and boys ended up missing, wounded, or dead. The horrors of Gettysburg were well documented. Photographs taken in the aftermath of the battle graphically depict images of the dead. Row upon row of bodies lined the fields and streets. Many were buried where they fell. But there are some who feel that the soldiers who died in combat were the lucky ones. Wounded survivors taken to the makeshift field hospitals faced a living hell. Amputation was the order of the day. And then there were those unfortunate souls who with just a single shot became the walking dead.
If you were hit in the head by that soft-lead mini-ball, sometimes it didn't kill you. And they had areas on battlefields that they roped off. And these poor fellas who 1 minute were full of patriotism, the next minute just virtually nobodies, wandered around, bumped into the ropes, perhaps still marching as they had just moments before they lost consciousness. Finally, until they bled to death, and then they would take them off and bury them.
The mix of morbid fascination and historical reverence is a lure too powerful to resist.
For Americans, of course, it's almost like a rite of passage. We have, high school classes memorizing the Gettysburg Address and then visiting this site where Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. But with the advent of the ghostly aspect of it, I think people are coming here for a different reason.
That ghostly aspect includes frightening apparitions and strange phenomena that defy explanation.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
When I tell people what I do, I'm a ghost hunter, most laugh and say, sure, right. And then a few minutes later, they'll come up to me and tell me a story. Everybody has a story.
Stories of Gettysburg's haunted battlefields and buildings are not new. They reach back nearly 150 years. The numerous eyewitness accounts of contact with ghosts of fallen soldiers are too similar in detail and frequency to be dismissed. One paranormal epicenter is Pennsylvania Hall on the Gettysburg College campus. It used to be called Old Dorm. During and after the battle, Old Dorm was used as a field hospital. Here, hundreds, perhaps thousands of men suffered through crude and hasty surgeries. It is said the blood of Confederate and Union soldiers literally flowed through the halls. The Gettysburg College campus is rife with stories and legends of paranormal activity. But the scariest tale of all belongs to Old Dorm.
two administrators were working late one night on the 4th floor, which is where their offices were. It was about 11 o'clock. They were tired, decided it's time to go. Got in the elevator, pushed the button for the 1st floor, which is where the exit was.
What happened next was like being dropped through a tear in the fabric of time. As the elevator descended, it passed the 2nd and 1st floors, finally stopping at the basement level. When the doors opened, the two women were horrified by what they saw.
The doors opened on a scene out of time and reason. It opened on the hospital, a Civil War hospital. There were men in corners moaning, groaning, trying to staunch the blood from their wounds, waiting for an operation. The surgeon was already working on someone, and apparently he looked up, recognized the ladies in motion for them to come in and help. The ladies were punching frantically at the buttons, trying to get out of this frozen moment in time.
Finally, the doors closed. The women were so shaken, they instinctively rushed to the office of Timon Lynn, the Director of Safety and Security Operations for Gettysburg College. What they told Officer Lynn smacked of a practical joke. Or did it?
They had a look that something was wrong. Quite frankly, I expected to go over and find either a fraternity prank or... I wasn't sure what to find, but I was thinking it was going to be a fraternity prank or something along that line. Went back to the Penn Hall. It was empty, and there was nothing. The mechanism of the elevator was fine. We checked the elevator, checked the basement completely. Given the scene that they described with the soldiers and the surgery and all this stuff going on, there's no way a prank could have been in there and out of there in the time from they reported to us till we walked across the street and found it.
Officer Lynn knew these women well and took their report seriously.
Their story doesn't change. It never did change any time we ever talked about it. And a lot of times you talk to people that maybe aren't sincere. The facts sometimes waver. They were pretty steadfast in what they said they saw and what they felt they saw.
Dr. Charles Emmons is a professor of sociology at Gettysburg College, an expert on human behavior. Dr. Emmons believes that the actions of the two women lend credibility to their story.
They didn't want to talk about it later. So it's not that they made it up, it's that they were afraid to talk about it. Why would they make it up and then refuse to talk about it?
No single explanation can cover the variety of ghost stories that emanate from Gettysburg. When we come back, a guilt-ridden soldier begs forgiveness from beyond the grave. It is said that many of the fields, barns, and structures in Gettysburg are haunted. Most of the old buildings that were standing at the time of the battle have been restored to their original form. One of the loveliest, but perhaps the most haunted, is the Farnsworth House. Today it is such a popular bed and breakfast that travelers must book a room in advance. But the history of this fine Pennsylvania home is checkered with stories of tragedy and sadness. The battle itself scarred the south wall of the house with more than 100 bullet holes. The Farnsworth House is now a family-run business. Patty O'Day is one of the owner's daughters. In the basement, she puts on a Civil War mourning theater for her guests. It is here that Patty and her cast of narrators recount the history of Gettysburg and its many ghost stories. Perhaps one of the saddest chapters in the old home's past revolves around the only civilian casualty of the entire Gettysburg battle. It seems that Mary Virginia Wade, more commonly known as Jenny Wade, was not an intentional target. However, living directly across from the Farnsworth house put her quite literally in the wrong place at the wrong time.
The only reason really why she was in the house, actually, and not in the cellar, is because she was tending her sister, had just had a baby, and she was helping out. She was also baking bread to feed the soldiers.
A three-story structure, the Farnsworth house was used as high ground by sharpshooters during the battle. From the house's garret, rebel soldiers had a clear shot at their adversaries.
I don't know exactly what this fellow was thinking, but he was firing at Union soldiers that were in the yard in the Jenny Wade house. So, of course, a lot of those bullets would be stray bullets.
Tragically, one of the bullets pierced the house's wooden front door and struck Jenny in the back. Her young life was snuffed out instantly. It is now commonly believed that the spirits of both Jenny and her killer stalk the hallways and rooms of the Farnsworth house. At night, one can hear Jenny asking, why? While the forlorn soldier begs forgiveness. Those aren't the only ghosts at the Farnsworth house. It seems that restless spirits frequent every floor. One of Patty's theater narrators experienced a
Get ready for the shows, and she was actually seated in a chair, and she just sort of closed her eyes. She opened them, and it was just like the whole room was entirely blank. It was no longer the theater at all. The seats were gone, and she saw 3 soldiers, and one seemed to be in charge, and he was ordering these 2 other Confederate soldiers to pick up this long box that was on the floor, and he wanted them to go up into another level of the house. And the experience for her just lasted a few seconds, you know, and then it just flashed back, and the theater, everything that, you know, that's down in the cellar now reappeared.
Although Patty speaks openly about the strange goings-on at the Farnsworth house, she discourages identifying it as haunted. She prefers the term rich with history. But people who go to Gettysburg and stay in this wonderful old bed and breakfast will be duly warned.
Sometimes if people are sensitive, we suggest maybe that they stay maybe even someplace else or in a newer section of the house, you know, so they're not really bombarded. Somebody from the Jenny Wade room packed up and left because they had someone in the middle of the night ran their hands down her face while she was, you know, just partially awake, so, and that frightened her. There's just a lot of different stories about the house, and there is a lot of pain here, and there's a lot of things that still remain that, you know, can't be explained.
Second-hand accounts of ghosts and other paranormal encounters abound in Gettysburg. But are these just ghost stories and nothing more? In an effort to substantiate proof of paranormal activity, Mark Nesbitt and the International Ghost Hunter Society have spent thousands of hours collecting photographic and audio anomalies to back up their claims. Yet the strongest independent evidence may have been captured by video cameras.
There goes one.
When we come back, startling images caught on tape.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
This is popping like crazy over here.
Rich and detailed history of alleged hauntings in Gettysburg make it a natural meeting place for investigators of the paranormal. The International Ghost Hunter Society holds their annual conference here. When the speeches are over, they make it a practice to venture out into the fields and other haunted places. Rick Fisher is the founder of the Pennsylvania Ghost Hunter Society. He prefers to approach paranormal investigations on a technical rather than spiritual level.
A ghost hunter looks for evidence of possible proof that life goes on, and we believe that it does. We find instruments that we can detect anomalies and things like that we believe to be spirits of the dead. Gettysburg is very haunted because of the tragedy that occurred here during the Civil War. And it's not uncommon to go on any parts of the battlefield and get strange photographs, experience equipment failure, things like that.
Fisher claims that recent developments in consumer technology, such as the digital camera and the voice recorder, have finally provided the average ghost hunter with equipment capable of recording visual and auditory anomalies.
Science tells us every human emits electromagnetic fields. When we die, the physical body dies, but the soul, the spirit, still remains behind. And this is energy. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. This is a digital camera. These are great for filming paranormal activity. It uses a computer chip. So it's basically electromagnetic in origin, which we know the spirits are electromagnetic in origin. And we believe that corresponds with that.
Mark Nesbitt has been recording electromagnetic phenomena in and around Gettysburg for years. Some of his most startling documentation of ghostly entities has been recorded on digital tape, a process referred to as EVP.
EVP is electronic voice phenomenon. Approximately 60% of all the paranormal experiences are auditory. Perhaps it's easier for the energies to communicate on an auditory level with the electromagnetism and the electricity in your brain. Maybe we're antennas. The thing that gives me the so-called willies is the EVP. When you can actually hear someone and hear voices and communicate and hear them answer your questions, to me that's a little scary.
And then there are the thousands of photographic oddities, most commonly referred to as orbs, that consistently appear in the camera viewfinders, videotapes, and photographs of professional and amateur ghost hunters. Mark Nesbitt invited our crew along on a ghost hunting expedition in, of all places, the attic of his office.
Now, what's happening here is that we've been taking pictures off in that direction, okay? And wouldn't it be great for you to get some of those things floating around up there?
The results were startling.
All right, ready? I'll turn this up too.
Michael, I saw two to the left of you.
That's exactly what I saw.
Did you
Get
really?
out.
I swear I thought it was something...
Yeah.
Does he have a camera in his hand?
It's off. I have a camcorder, yeah.
Did it again. Just saw it. Did it again. That is too freaky. Did it again. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
This is popping like crazy over here.
We've slowed down the tape to take a closer look at these flashes. Notice that they could not have been projected from one single location, since the flashes appeared simultaneously in the viewfinders of two separate cameras. That seems to rule out technical problems as a possible source.
It's ice cold right here. It's ice cold right here.
Oh, there, where again?
Yeah,
right where you said it was ice cold.
Right here.
Yep.
I could feel it.
Oh, that's too wild.
It's like
Evidence of ghosts or not, what was witnessed in the attic of Mark Nesbitt's office was very unusual, to say the least. We later found out that Mark's office was in a building occupied by Confederate sharpshooters during the Battle of Gettysburg. Many of those soldiers died in his attic. Later that night, our crew joined Dave Oster and Rick Fisher for a traditional ghost hunt in a Civil War cemetery.
What I'm looking for is any type of white light. Normally the orbs of light are above, around some of the tombstones. And they show up like a sphere.
Okay, there's one here. I can feel it. I don't see anything yet.
Okay, we got one. Just to the right over here. The orb right there. And the digital technology is fantastic because it eliminates developing and processing flaws. Remember, the spirits are electromagnetic in nature. A digital camera can record the presence because they're electromagnetic. I mean, they're both working on the same format. Oh my goodness, we're getting them. They're here. Just right here, the big one here, some up there, like a whole bunch of small ones coming out around it.
The results we got were intriguing, and Rick Fisher's digital camera provided us with even more pieces of the paranormal puzzle.
Rick Fisher set up a camera upstairs on one of the evenings he spent here in my office, and he just let it run for an hour and walked away. About 30 seconds left in the tape. You see two of these orbs, one going from the bottom right corner up towards the upper left-hand corner, and another one right after it. And in a whisper, you can hear a voice say, "Catch me."
We took the video Mark just described and slowed it down to half its normal speed. In addition, we boosted the audio to 4 times its normal setting. Watch, listen, and decide for yourself.
That's, to my knowledge, the first time that someone has combined video with EVP.
So what are the orbs in these photographs? And what are the strange murmurings that ghost hunters like Nesbitt and Fisher capture on digital audio tapes? Are they the work of overactive imaginations, searching for some guarantee that life exists after death? Or are they something from beyond the grave that we are just beginning to understand?
Why should this be a trivialized phenomenon when it may change our whole view of the universe and the nature of human beings? it is something truly amazing, and that it's just way beyond our ability to comprehend it.
The Battle of Gettysburg proved to be a catalyst for ending slavery in this country. It also spawned one of the most beautiful documents of all time. President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address spoke of a new birth of freedom, for the people shall not perish from the earth. But what of the scores who perished on both sides of the conflict? Why do the spirits of fallen soldiers seem to linger in Gettysburg? Is it true old soldiers never die, they just fade away?
Soldiers would say from opposite sides, see you in hell, Johnny. Johnny River, see you in hell, Billy. Billy Yank. They believed that they were doing something horrible and sinful by killing one another here. And perhaps there still is that fear of judgment. And maybe that's why they cling to this place called Gettysburg.